Athens has to be one of the most storied cities in all of European history. It's been inhabited for millennia, given us the philosophical works of Socrates, Plato, Diogenes, men who walked and, in some cases, slept on these very streets. What I find interesting is that today, Athens is one of Europe's most densely populated cities. At over 10,000 people per square kilometer. You would not expect it from a city that doesn't seem to have as many high rises as Paris or New York. So, how did they do it? What went right for Athens to be this dense and this relatively human scale? In Greek, the word Polykatoika literally means multiple residences and can refer to pretty much any apartment you find in Greece. It's a generic term that started to be used in the 1920s when the first Polykatoika went up in Athens. In English, however, the term Polykatoika refers to a specific set of buildings constructed in Athens from 1950 to about the 1970s. These are constructed in a much different way compared to North American apartments, and additionally, the way they are funded is much different. It is a model that I don't think is used in the United States at all, although it is used elsewhere around the world. By understanding the nature of how these buildings were constructed and how they were financed, I think we can provide a living example of how North America might move forward to solve the housing crisis. The rise of the Polykatoika came about in large part due to an increase in population to the city of Athens. In 1950, this would have been a year after the end of the Greek Civil War. Athens had seen battle, and there was much reconstruction to be done. With almost any property development, the two costs on everyone's mind tend to be how much is it going to cost us to buy the land or the land rights, and how much is it going to cost us to buy the building materials from which we can actually build the thing. Thankfully, in Greece at the time, developers had access to a relatively robust, high quality, and affordable industry of concrete and cement production, meaning building costs would be relatively low. Unfortunately for housing developers at the time, the cost of buying land in Athens was very expensive, relatively or not. It was also very complicated and bureaucratic. It would take possibly months. The government saw this problem and decided to take action, crafting a policy which would do three things. Firstly, reform the land sale system. Secondly, lower the taxation requirements. And thirdly, require a reciprocal and collaborative relationship between builder and homeowner. While the tax cuts might have been nice, really it's the land reform that matters here, because that land reform provided for an alternative method of paying existing homeowners. You see, rather than paying for the land outright and a developer owning it, instead with this new model of development, homeowners would be given apartments in the new building in exchange for the privilege of building on their land. With an interest in maximizing space, of course there was a building code to adhere to. A homeowner could easily come out with 20 or 40 or 50 apartments across several buildings, depending on how large the parcel of their land was. There are also several instances in which the builder and homeowner are effectively the same person, if not one family, working together to build apartments on land that they own. To give perspective on just how many people were moving to Athens during this time period, from 1950 to 1960, the population rose from 1.34 million to north of 1.8 million. By 1975, the population of Athens would reach 2.8 million residents, and with the expansion of the Polykatoika system to other parts of Greece, seeing its success in the capital, rural and lesser developed areas of the country were able to benefit from similar reforms in policy. In 1950, Athens only had about 1,000 five-story buildings. By 1965, you're looking at 35,000 five-story buildings or higher. The average size of a Polykatoika unit is 75 square meters, or roughly 800 square feet for my North American viewers. This construction boom was no doubt a benefit to the Greek economy at the time. From 1950 to 1975, Greece saw record GDP growth, averaging 7% year over year. In almost all cases, Polykatoika developments would include retail space at the ground floor, otherwise it may be used for storage. This would encourage businesses to open up, and residents who did not need a car would be hard-pressed not to visit these businesses due to proximity. Now, you may be from North America and wondering, well, what are the downsides here? This looks nice for Greece, but what am I missing? You may live in a town like this where apartments are just not very common. So, let me tell you, there are a couple of downsides. As Polykatoika are 5 to 7 stories, generally speaking, many do not have elevators. Some do. Admittedly, these have been being built for 50, 60 years. Many could have them retrofitted, but it is generally not the rule. A second factor that may be a negative depending on who you are is parking spaces. Most Polykatoika don't come with them. A lot of people will park their cars on the side of the road. You may also wonder about the real estate market. Isn't it true that if you build denser housing, things are more expensive? Well, it can be, but in reality, while Athens might be more expensive than the average in Greece, the Greek real estate market in general is some of the cheapest per square meter in Europe. Now, how much this has to do with 2008, that's debatable. One thing I did find super interesting about Athens is that the metropolitan area has a higher car ownership rate than Los Angeles, Tbilisi, and Budapest. I would love if there could be a Greek that explains why this is, because I always thought that Athens was a relatively transit-oriented city. You may also ask, what can North America take away from the Polykatoika model? Well, I personally think there are two things that America in particular should learn. The first thing is the proximity effect. In effect, proximity refers to the distance between a person and their destination. The shorter that distance, the more resilient a community and wider city can be. The easier it is to provide services, both commercial and public. If the distance is short, you get vibrant community, small businesses, medium-sized businesses competing with each other and popping up, little boutique restaurants and cafes that you can go to on a regular basis, even farmers markets and local community events. Those are very common around the world, and they're made that way because people can see each other and connect. If they are too far apart, however, people need to have more of an opportunity cost to leave their home. It means there's less opportunity for community. Public services need to spend more money not just on rollout, but on upkeep. I don't think it's that controversial of an opinion to suggest that public officials have a duty to provide quality services to their community as is within their power. And in the United States, the supposedly richest country on earth, we certainly have the resources and funds to attempt that. In my opinion, one of the most remarkable, impactful, and arguably empowering elements of this Polykatoika model is the land sale system. That is to say, the United States should start permitting these alternative land sale policies. Where I'm currently living in the southern United States, many people own land, whether they actively farm, whether they're fishing or hunting, whether they just use it for recreation. These are people who've had land in their family for generations. Similar to the Balkans, it's something that you just pass down to your kids. Rather than solely relying on one-time payments where developers potentially spend millions upon millions, it may be a lot more effective to allow the landowners to have a stake in the development by providing them apartments and or retail space of an equivalent value. In focusing on the function rather than the form of the Polykatokia, I think that North America can recreate that same sense of community, of a lively urban environment, of a place where you can achieve most of your daily tasks without the necessity of a car. Thank you for watching this piece to the end. Make sure to check if you're subscribed and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.